All right, so this video is on estrogen, the coochie essence. Essence du femme, du coochie. All right, about dietary and supplemental estrogens, including estrogen medications. Okay. Forward. Estrogen is only mandatory under legal mandate. Okay. Like in terms of supplementation or what, like other health administration, whatever. For certain crimes, the U.S. government can intervene and force someone to take estrogens to prevent or disrupt certain criminal activity. They can also do what's called medical emasculation or chemical castration. Man, if you abuse your balls, then someone will come to clip them. Okay, so don't say you weren't fairly warned. Okay. Estrogen is in the class of chemicals called progestins, which are chemicals that develop female physiology, such as juicy tatas, pronounced vulva, nice hips, round feminine butt, etc. Just all the amazing stuff we like, and I don't think many people argue that one. Estrogens create a nice pheromone smell that a lot of men like too. Okay. We don't say it, nobody really says it, but it's true. Okay. Um, when when men smell it in a woman's sweat or whatever, they just it's anyway. So I don't need to explain. So estrogens consistently drive sex differentiation across different species. Gonadic hormones need to be in balance with the other 34 hormones produced in by the body. Okay. They have to release and be absorbed in proper amounts to avoid psychological damage, character perversion, etc. Okay. An excess of sex hormone can be very dehumanizing for a person. Okay. The estrogens we covered here are estriol, estriol, or progesterone. Okay. Progesterone is something that perpetuates estrogen, perpetuates menstruation and the pregnancy biocycle. Okay. It maintains pregnancy at insufficient levels that can cause medical instability in pregnant, and the insufficient levels of that can cause medical instability in pregnant women. Okay. Safety information. Estrogen can be allergenic and even risk anaphylaxis. Okay. There's some other risks are heart attack, stroke, blood clot, stomach swelling, jaundice, memory problems, confusion, or unusual behavior. Unusual behavior isn't necessarily bad. Confusion isn't even necessarily bad either. So confusion can lead to clarity and stuff. Uh, Vaginal bleeding, pelvic pain, lump in breast, nausea, vomiting, constipation, muscle weakness, bone pain, or lack of energy. Okay. Um, Lack of energy is also not necessarily a bad thing either and stuff. If you're going to sleep, you probably don't want a ton of energy, um, for example. So some risky conditions and stuff. Yeah, so there's this kind of defective belief that there's supposed to be like a mandatory gender role for women and stuff. I mean, if if feminist philosophy didn't lay it out pretty well and stuff, that the biochemistry lays it out very well, the medical science lays it out very well and stuff. Um, there are some women that have to tightly regulate their estrogen and stuff because of things like a thrombophlebitis and all these other things I mentioned here and stuff. It has contraindications, meaning that if there's a past a certain level of estriol and stuff, estriol is like the primary feminizing hormone from the estrogens and stuff. In terms of promoting youthful feminine development and stuff. Um, and like puberty inducing basically. Um, when estradiol gets too high and stuff, and you have these contraindications, you can get you can become medically unstable potentially and stuff. Um, so we're not just talking about experiencing symptoms and stuff. We're talking about or or we're talking about potentially like risking damage to your career and stuff, or you know, or your life. So yeah, people have to know that and stuff. And this is some of the contraindications. Okay, estrogens treat and take care of osteoporosis and stuff. Estrogens also work in men to prevent osteoporosis too. They're important for bone health and stuff. The male body converts some testosterone to estrogen to do that. Menopause, of course, the inability to produce estrogen and stuff. Atrophic vaginitis. Oh no. Um, Vaginal dryness, which is risky and can lead to infections, baby fevers, or depression resulting from a lack of conceiving a child or children, either parent. It's been documented, it's real and stuff. Up to 40% of adult women in the United States experience it. Um, some forms of prescription estrogen, conjugated estrogens, DOTI, pure estriadol, desogestrel, ethinyl estriadol, estriadol cypionate, uvafem, estriol valerate, esterified estrogen. Esterification is an interesting area of chemistry, and lessons can be made on that too. Um, Effects of estrogen on women, disturbance of estrogen equilibrium leads to these things: PMS, PMDD, clinical depression, and which comes to the risk of suicide or serious damage to life, person or property. Irritability, anxiety. Depression could also lead to homicide too, like murder, homicide. irritability, anxiety, and so anxiety is a bad one. So how, for people that don't understand anxiety, how anxiety basically works in the human psyche is it's like a spiky um, eel that wraps around you from head to toe, and it gets into your brain and your body and everything. It is very crippling and stuff. It's a very disabling physiological state, sort of psycho-emotional state, whatever you want to call it. It's Yeah, night sweats not necessarily unhealthy. This sort of detail is more of an economic issue. Now, mind you, there's different kinds of anxiety and stuff. Anxiety can occur as an increase in norepinephrine levels or epinephrine levels and an increase in thyroid activity and stuff, and that's fine. That's fine. That's part of the natural biocycle. Okay. Um, so insomnia is not always a bad thing. Sleep timing is biologically clocked. Mood swings and depression, not necessarily a bad thing. This is cultural, not necessarily allostatic. Headaches, ADD, memory problems, edema. Edema is not necessarily a bad thing. Edema is often part of the anabolic cycle and stuff, especially when it comes to the development of the hips and butt, or the juicy tatas I mentioned. The baby fever or natalist nymphomania, not necessarily a bad thing. Depends on medical, ethical, and economic expert ruling more than anything else. Okay. Yeah. Baby fever becomes an issue when a family is economically insolvent. Low or high sex drive, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Disturbances in testosterone in males can lead to depression or anxiety as well. This is because, like estrogen, testosterone is a gonane chemical. Estrogen and testosterone first appeared in similar geologic time periods. Evolutionarily speaking, humans, I don't think it was separate time periods, I think they were in the same time period. Evolutionarily speaking, humans have much narrower sex differentiation than bacteria and other primitive life and stuff. Bacteria have many biological genders or biological sexes. Okay, we're not over here talking about this social identification gender and stuff. That's a different usage of the word. Men with elevated estrogen can lash out emotionally at people or property and lose mental sharpness because estrogen works differently in biological men than it does in biological women and stuff. They also tend to just talk incessantly about a bunch of nonsense. It works differently in men. Okay. Some psychological effects in estrogen in women: nymphomania and nymphoinclination, emotionality and emphaticness, wearing the hardens on your sleeve and stuff. Stress intolerance, playfulness, brain turns off when tired or stressed, so to speak. It doesn't literally turn off and stuff, but the person has a hard time thinking. But this is a health protection mechanism. It allows recharging of batteries consistent with parasympathetic dominance and stuff. Parasympathetic dominance is an imbalance, so that's potentially not good. Resting, digesting related activity or ideas of what to do. Mind games, extroversion rather than introversion, maybe even ambiversion, extraperversion. Experiencing of sexual tension with other gender. Okay. This is kind of part of the normal human biocycle. Risque humor, especially in men. The women usually make coquettish displays and have constant social signaling behaviors like this. Their thought process leaps from person to person. Social intelligence. Yep. Some psychological effects of androgens in males, like testosterone. Socially competitive behavior, territorial behavior, dominating behavior, aggression. Upper extremes come with elevated adrenaline and stuff. Extremes meaning violatory behaviors, picking fights with people and stuff. But adrenal gland development is not biologically determined by sex differentiation. Risque jokes, emotional suppression, emotional highs, libido, social intelligence, memory formation, emotional insensitivity. Okay. Generally speaking, males should avoid isoflavone estrogens such as those found in soy, but certain estrogens such as from flax seeds increase brain function. They can make men smarter without emasculation by improving information processing and memory. Okay, men should avoid soy, being too sedentary during breaking hours, excess glucose, hops. Why is it so small? Abusing their balls. Again, like I said, you abuse your balls, someone's going to come to clip them, I promise you. Sleep deprivation, plastics, extreme temperatures, physical overtraining, etc. If they want to be in good health and avoid hormone disruption, use stress within medical limits can suppress estrogen production in the body, and there are safe natural dietary sources of hormone balancing. Okay. Remember to always respect the medical limits set by healthcare providers, and that works well for you individually. Thankfully, testosterone is not a predictor for morally dubious behavior. MAO gene mutation, along with elevated adrenaline, epinephrine, and serotonin combined, tend to lead to criminal behavior when combined with elevated testosterone. Testosterone alone does not make men angry, okay? Caffeine is a problematic chemical here too. Testosterone also works as a stimulant. It's an energizer and stuff. You get increased ATP production and amino acid utilization and stuff. And it increases brain activity. Um, yeah, it sharpens your focus and stuff. It's yeah. It was an old myth that elevated testosterone makes people angry. Caffeine is a problematic chemical there too. So now, mind you, has steroid use in the past led to bouts of rage? Yes, and so but that's contingent on a lot of other factors. Um, but yeah, caffeine is a problematic chemical there too. Caffeine tends to lead to aggression because it raises adrenaline levels. Generally speaking, many natural foods and edible compounds pose health dangers that affect estrogen and other sex hormone activities, such as broccoli, mustard, shellfish. Um, Broccoli and mustard are goitrogens, meaning they inhibit the thyroid, which can treat hyperthyroidism and stuff. But these foods are kind of everywhere, which makes them a problem. Chinese cinnamon, peanut butter. Peanut butter is inflammatory. I would stay away from it. Potatoes, especially russet potatoes, they often have nightshade poison. Shellac, mealworm-based protein powder, and other edible insect matter increases nausea, gross out reaction, or vomiting. Spoiled food containing unsanitized fungal material and stuff. Fungus is edible to humans, but spoiled food containing, just infectious stuff, no. That you can easily get a gut mold infection or an respiratory infection. It makes you septic. You, Especially when it comes to tomato sauce and stuff. Tomato sauce, when it spoils, creates botulinum toxin, which is the most potent, if not one of the most potent poisons known to humankind. Or, as far as I know, there's plenty of others. But yeah, anyway, so that concludes the first episode of this. Rather interesting topic. We covered the coochie essence du femme du coochie. Okay, about diet, estrogen. So, yeah.